Wondering how your mindset affects your life? How to bring more energy into your business and life? Millions of people around the world ask these same questions daily. You are in the right place. Learn practices that will help give your life the meaning and success you've been searching for. Welcome to the Charge Podcast, teaching you how to create habits around real goals every day. Practical life advice from those who made it. Here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
You may be asking, why is it so hard to find quality employees for my business? When running a business, you face new challenges every day. Finding the right candidates and keeping them during this time is extremely critical to your success. Every business should be able to find the right candidates with a proven system and retain them by coaching them to success. The Success in Hiring Framework gives you the tools you need to attract, engage, and retain quality team members so that you can move your business to the next level. With my Success in Hiring system for business owners, you will learn how to recruit, hire, and retain the right fit for your unique business. I created this system after all my experience as a business owner with the same struggles as you. Best of all, it is free. Why do I do that? Because my purpose in life is to help business owners reach their full potential. Go to chargepodcast.com and click on the link, Success in Hiring, to start you on the path to hiring the right people for your business. Welcome, Chargers. We're glad to have you back again this week for another great guest. I'm telling you, we've lined up some great guests for you. And today I've done it again. And I'm excited to share Chris with you. But before I do that, Chris is going to share with us, what problem do you solve for the Charge Podcast listeners?
Well, there's two problems that we're going to hit. One, how to scale your business, how to replace yourself so you don't just have a job. You know, business owners need to learn how to grow beyond themselves. That was probably one of the biggest leveling ups for me and a number of the businesses that I own. And then the second thing that I'd love to talk about is just how to grow passive income, how to invest in I think real estate's the best investment out there, but how to invest in real estate and really grow to a monster level where you build wealth. And my definition of wealth is when your money works harder than you work.
Yeah, I love that. And I love passive income. So I love those conversations. Now, what's three questions, Chris, that I can ask you that the Charge Podcast can learn from you that you're going to answer basically for them today?
Man, this is great up front. Three questions that you can ask. One is, what is the best way to scale your business beyond yourself? Number two is, how do I start looking at money in a different way? And three, what is the language of money that you've learned, you know, going from a person that was trying to sell his blood, you know, a little over a decade ago to buy Christmas presents for his family to kind of the opposite of that now.
All right. This is going to be a fun conversation. I can't wait to get started. Chris Craddock is who we have with us. He's a nationally certified life coach in leadership and one of the top real estate professionals in the world, closing 30 to 65 deals a month. Chris Craddock is the host of Uncommon Real Estate Podcast. He's a realtor and an entrepreneur who runs multiple successful businesses in the Washington, D.C. metro area and Richmond, Virginia. Chris and his companies consistently bring in close to $10 million in revenue per year. His team, the Redux Group, sold just over $160 million in volume in 2020. Chris has been married for 21 years, and he is the proud father to 6 beautiful children. Chris, it is great to have you on the Charge Podcast. Welcome.
Happy to be here, brother. Happy to be here. Excited. This is fun.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you about real estate investing and that passive income that we've talked about. But let's just kick it off with your first question, because I think for a lot of our business owners, they're trying to do the same thing. They're wanting to grow their business, but they're being challenged in that. And you talked about what is the best way to really scale your business beyond yourself, because I have a philosophy that when we're just a business owner, the business owns us.
That's right. That's right. You just have a job. And even if you're making a lot of money, it's a high paying job, but I mean, you're still working for the man, but the man is a slave driver, which is you, because you're not doing enough to get out of it, right? So here's what I'd say. The first thing I did, because I tried to elevate myself out of the business to where I was working on it rather than in it too early, and I lost a fortune, a couple years before I was able to move out of the day-to-day. And it was because I didn't really understand a number of the pieces of the business that I understood later. So first, I'd say get a reading list of books on how to scale. Here's my reading list. I think that everybody should look at. One is a book called The E-Myth. Most people have heard this. Two, a book called Who Not How, which I think is really, really powerful. A book called Scrum, How to Do Twice the Work in Half the Time. A book called EOS Traction. Make sure you get EOS Traction, not Traction, because there's two different books. And I remember reading the wrong or listening to the wrong one on Audible. And I'm like, everybody keeps telling me this is great, but it's not. So EOS Traction. And then the last one, and this is the one I want to talk just briefly about, is a book called Clockwork. It's by the same guy that wrote Profit First, which every business owner should also read, but that's a different story. But Clockwork, how to run your business like clockwork. And I'll just tell you the one thing on it that was really powerful to me is getting like a sticky note pad, like having a time audit, right? And you get your sticky note pad and literally everything you do, like maybe you checked your email, then made a phone call and then checked your email again. You're putting check the email twice on there, but you're literally just on the sticky pad, right? Every time you do anything. And it's like tracking your calories, right? If you have a MyFitnessPal and you grab one chip, you've got to track it. You can't say, oh, it was just one email, I'm not going to write it down. You have to do every single thing. And then you put it on your wall, right? Like you just put it on the wall of your office. Then you can look at all the things that you did. And then you run your time audit, because let's say you make $100,000 a year, your time is worth $50 an hour. Let's say you make $1 million a year, it's worth $500 an hour, and you can scale it up or down from there. But let's just use $100,000 a year because that's the easiest number for me to just, my math is, I don't do higher math well.
I like easy math too, Chris.
So $50 an hour, right? You're $100,000 a year person, right? That's what you make. And again, do your math, right? But if you look on the wall and you're making $100 and $100,000 a year, anything worth less than $50 an hour, you need to put in another category, right? And all of a sudden you'll start seeing that you've got a lot of like admin type work where you can hire somebody at $20, $30 an hour to do half of the price of what your time is worth right there. And you just create a position and then you give that person that money, that position. And then what happens is you've just freed back. Usually it's about 80% of your time is below, right? Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. 80% of your time is below what you're making an hour. And then all of a sudden, I mean, business owners, we're not just going to twiddle our thumbs saying, hey, I just got tons of time back, I'm going to go watch Jerry Springer. Like that doesn't happen, right? We then say, okay, now I can put my time back to work in my higher than $50 an hour activity. And then you start leveling up and scaling up. You know, that to me was the first year that I broke $1 million in net income. Like everybody talks about different numbers, like income that I get to take home. It was because I realized that so much of what I was doing was not high dollar productive activity, right? And as soon as I hired somebody and gave almost 80% of what I was doing to this person, I could spend my time in my 20%. And then boom, my income, like literally went up by about 40%. I broke the $1 million mark for the first year. And then, from there I could start scaling that up and really grow from there, because you realize even once you get to that $1 million mark, then you still realize that even though you've leveled up, now 80% of your time is worth less than $500 an hour. And then you get that all in a different role. You hire somebody for the stuff that's less than $500 an hour. Then you get to the $2 million. And that's how scale happens.
Yeah, I love that, Chris. And you talked about the books and you named 5, really 6, with Profit First being in there too. I'm on that side of it. And I've checked out 4 out of those 6. So I'm glad to see that in that range. But one of the things I'm curious about, was that a mindset shift? Was it something that you got from a coach? What made you say, this is crazy, I'm going to change it?
Well, it's a little bit of both. It's a leveling up, right? And so Jim Rohn talks about that. You're the average of the five people. For me, I'd love to say, show me your friends, I'll show you your future kind of idea there. And, as I was hanging out with more and more people that had scaled out of the day-to-day of their business, there were two friends that I got to be really close with. And one of them is a guy out of California, a guy named Gary Boomershine. And I still remember Gary saying, listen, he's like, my marriage was in trouble. I was 50 pounds overweight. I was working 110 hours a week and I was making good money, but it just wasn't the life that I wanted. Right. And he said that he hired a business coach. He started working, less than 10 hours a week. He said he 5x'd his income. He lost 50 pounds. And all of a sudden, him and his wife, their marriage just got a lot better and, and started having the marriage he wanted to have. And a lot of that was just because he learned how to grow as a business leader. And then you realize that's important for us to do. Right. And so and then I had a couple other friends that have really elevated themselves from the day-to-day of operations. And so that it just gave me a path, right? Because as long as there's fog, it's hard to get there. But as soon as the fog descends, you can see the path. It's easy to get where you want to go.
Yeah. And the reason I asked that question, because I know a lot of business owners, I work with them, they're challenged in that of how do I move out of it? But part of it is it comes down to you. It's really looking at, doing that time inventory is not fun because it will really show you where you're wasting time. I'm in the process of doing a little bit of time inventory. I actually have my staff doing it right now. And there is way too many things I'm doing that are not above that line, but that makes that change that you're going to make for yourself to really allow you to move forward. And I think that's the key, but it's a mindset shift to say, I'm going to make that change and I'm going to work towards that. It doesn't happen tomorrow, but it can happen pretty rapidly when you get rid of those things below the line.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it just brings clarity, right? Like what is, high performance habits, Brendon Burchard, right? He says, seek clarity. Or is that 7 habits? Anyway, It's somewhere. Somebody says it.
High performance habits. You got it right, Brendan.
It's a good idea. We should seek clarity, but as long as we're in the whirlwind, right? Like as long as we're doing the day to day, I was a high school soccer coach forever. And when I would go and play with the boys, right? Like we'd go out and we'd scrimmage for practice or whatever. I couldn't really get a good visualization of who was doing what wrong and who was doing what right, where should I encourage? Where should I, chastise? Like where is carrot? Where is stick? Because I was in the mix, right? But as soon as I stepped out, I had a real objective viewpoint, right? It was no longer subjective from me in the mix. And the same thing's true with your business. You think things are going great, that maybe they aren't, or maybe you think things are going terrible, but maybe they aren't. But until you can step back and really treat it as a business owner rather than an employee, which we really are when we're working our 9 to 5, we're never, ever going to see the objective truths of your business the way that you really need to make good calls on stuff. Because it's just all emotional, right? There's so much emotions involved in it when we're in the mix.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because I think business owners we need to take a look at that. And we've got to look at it and give some great recommendations. We'll have them all in show notes so people can go back as they take a look at it. But one of the other things that really struck me that you talked about is really looking at money a different way. That allows you to look at your time and realize really you're looking at money differently because you're things that are high quality, you're being paid what you're worth versus doing these smaller tasks. But when you mean looking at money a different way, what do you mean by that?
Well, see, I don't think people realize money is your army, right? Like we all have our kingdom, right? Maybe your kingdom's a small little kingdom. Maybe your kingdom's a massive kingdom, but we all have our kingdom and our money is our army, right? And so we need to be able to send it out and it needs to come back bigger and stronger, plundering and growing, it needs to come back like that. Otherwise, if it comes back smaller and, like lost battles, then it's not going to work for us. But if you think about the kingdom, right? Some kings would go out and lead the charge, but a lot of them, they would have a general that would go out and run it. And so like when we put our money to work, when we go to war with our money, it needs to come back bigger, better, conquering kingdoms and doing the things that that's really going to create growth for you and your family, right? And so when we understand that money is a tool that is an active tool, it's not just something that buys our car, buys our food, all the other stuff, but it's an active tool that really builds wealth, builds legacy for your family. That's when you just understand that it's different than what the average, they say that the 1%, people rail against it. It's not politically correct to praise the 1% right now, but the 1% understand money the way that 99% don't. And if the 99% understood money differently, they understood the language of it. They would understand the use of it. I mean, Robert Kiyosaki in Rich Dad Poor Dad, he says like when you see the use and the tool of money differently, you're gonna naturally become that rich dad.
Yeah, that's the key. And you use it, like you said, and it allows you to create that wealth. And when you use your money, and one of the things you're in is real estate, not only selling it, but also investing. So let's go there, if you don't mind. With investing, that becomes one of the tools because it becomes a passive income source. I've done that in my career, and I know a lot of people think about it. But right now, some people are thinking, what's the wrong time, Chris? Because, the market's high. But when you're going out to buy, but with passive income, and when you're talking about rental properties, when there's always a good time, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, what is it? Gary Keller says the difference between the genius and the idiot in real estate investing is how long you hold it. And it's just absolutely the truth. So like my house right now, we're building a new house. We're going to move into, I'm going to be able to keep my house. I bought the house that I live in right now. I'll just say real numbers just so that we can talk about it. At the top of the market, 2006, right before the biggest crash in the history of all crashes other than the Great Depression. I bought it in 2006, lost over six figures in less than a year on my house. I bought it for $690. I'm going to tell real numbers. Right now, I can sell my house after the biggest crash in the history of crashes for well over $1 million. And it's almost paid off. So I can say, oh man, I made such a foolish decision that if I would have waited 6 months, I would have been able to buy for so much less. Yeah, maybe that's true. But I literally have almost $1 million in equity in this house just because I held it long enough and I put a 15-year mortgage on it. Right. So that's the crazy thing when you see what's going on with real estate. It's how long you hold. So here's the other piece, right? Real estate, you win for so many different reasons. As you start making more money, you realize that you don't just want cash flow, right? Because cash flow is taxed at a higher rate. You want net worth growth, right? So here's an example. I buy this house right here. We're going to move into our farmette that we're building, in the next couple months. Well, this house will have all this equity in it, right? I'm not going to leave it as debt equity. I'm going to take that money. So if I sell this house, right, I get my tax benefit because I've lived here 2 out of the last 5 years. I could sell it in $500,000. I could keep tax-free, right? Or I just refinance out all of this money that I have here, and that's a non-taxable event. My rental properties, right? I can refinance hundreds of thousands of dollars out of a lot of my rental properties, and I do. That's a non-taxable event. Or I can sell it, and that's a taxable event. And so that's where understanding, like investing in real estate, it's massively more beneficial than just getting high cash flow or dividends or anything like that, where you're getting taxed on that, right? Because there's ways around it. There's a book called Tax-Free Wealth that I think every single moderately to high net worth individual in America should read, because the whole idea behind it is that the government incentivizes certain behavior, and some of those behaviors is owning real estate and providing housing to people, right? And so they're going to incentivize you to do that. Here's another thing. If you're a real estate professional, which doesn't mean that you need a real estate license, but it means that you spend more than 700, and I think it's 25 hours a year thinking or working or training on real estate, which it doesn't take much, a couple hours a week. doesn't take much of like reading about real estate, reading about investing, looking at buying a property, doing anything on that, then you can do something called accelerated depreciation, which with a cost segregation analysis, which means literally instead of taking like depreciating the whole structure over 27 and a half years, you can do that in year one. So you like literally, you buy a house, you can save tens of thousands of dollars in taxes that by depreciating it all in year one versus over 27 and a half years. And we all know present day value of money is much more valuable than 27 and a half years later.
Right. I appreciate you.
I know I'm just like going and going.
You got lots of info, but you're given resources where they can go to. That's the thing you have to still do, because what Chris has done, he's done his research. He's done his homework. It's your turn to do that, but he's given you the resources where they're at. We're going to have that all in show notes. So that's the key now for you to move forward. And I think that becomes a real key when you're looking at it. Now, Chris, let's touch on this last topic before we go into that question about language of money. For some people right now, of course, with real estate and what they're seeing interest rates go up, of course, they're afraid of what's going to happen into the marketplace. And you kind of touched it on already. We've had a downturn in 2007, 2008, when you bought on the top end of it. What would you tell those people that's looking now to purchase a piece of property of what they should consider, since you're a real estate investor, not only investor, but you're also a real estate salesperson. So I'm sure you're getting clients saying, well, maybe now is not a right time. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I had people tell me now's not the right time. Last year, the year before, the year before, the year before. Some of the people, like I had one of my buddies who was going to buy a house. He's a financial planner. He was going to buy a house just over 900,000 a couple of years ago. And he called me because he's like, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait. He called me last year and he was like, Chris, by waiting, he's like, the same house is now like about a $1.1 million house, isn't it? By not taking your advice and buying now, it just cost me almost 200 grand, didn't it? And I was like, your words, not mine. I'm not going to say I told you so, but you said it. So here's the deal. Even the market will go down at some point, right? It will correct at some point. But if you look at historical trends, goes up, down, up, down, up, down. And so as long as you hold it long enough, refi out, you're going to win in real estate. Real estate's like Monopoly, right? Whether you land on Mediterranean or on Boardwalk, you buy, right? You don't win if you don't buy. So that's one of the big keys right there. Now, what are the economic indicators pointing to? Zillow says that they see us going up 5% in the next 90 days. Redfin says over the next year, they see like in 2022, a 14% increase, which is a little bit less than 2021, but still a very high increase. Even with the interest rates going up, I've heard people say, oh, real estate people never say that there's a crash coming. Like it's not advantageous for them to say that. I get that, but that's not exactly true. If you look before the 2008 crash, real estate people were saying that. But right now, people that don't, I'm just going to tell you, the lake house that we bought last year, I won't use the real numbers because I know whatever, but bottom line is I had a hard time getting a conventional loan for that. I'm almost at enough Fannie Freddie loans. I got a lot of commercial. You can only have 10 Fannie Freddie investment or loans for investment. I'm almost there, but I also have some commercial loans. So I didn't not qualify for the loan, but it just was taking so long for them to give me the thumbs up. I literally had the cash in my bank account to buy it cash. And because it just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, I ended up having to buy it cash, but I didn't get the thumbs up. And then I had to refi it into a commercial loan, right? So people that can qualify, they're not just giving out loans like they did in 2005. A McDonald's worker making minimum wage is not buying $1 million houses. So we're not seeing what happened then. I'm going to get going. I'm just going to go 30 more seconds, just a couple of quick points. One, since 2008, before 2008, for almost every year, builders were building about 5 million new builds a year. Up until 2017, new builders were only coming out with about 1 million houses a year, which is 20% of what it's been in the history of like for decades, right? So we're already seeing less inventory there. Two, more interest rates are so freaking low, lower than the price of inflation. So people are holding on to their old house, like in areas where they never had before as rentals, and buying their new house. So there's less inventory still. Next, because of inflation, which is now the government says 8%. I don't believe that. The dollar store is now the $1.25 store. So you tell me whether it's only 8%. But we're looking at inflation. Real estate is a hedge against inflation, right? That is like hard assets, gold, silver, real estate, even cryptocurrency, because you can't when you go off the gold standard, like the dollar can be you just print more dollars, right? And so what's happening is people buy hard assets like real estate to hedge against this inflation going up. And so all of those coming together has created less inventory. And we know that price goes up when there's less available inventory. So even if with the interest rates going up, all it's going to do is really hedge, we're not going to see a massive crash like before, at least according to all the economic indicators that would make sense to me.
Right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, because with your experience there, because I know there's people still sitting on the sidelines, and that becomes the real challenge is, like you said, the last 2 years, if you sat on the sideline, it costs you a bunch of money to be able to do that. And your still interest rates are very, very good. That last area we wanted to touch on before we get to the recharge round is really, you talked about that language of money. And you talked a little bit about that, I think some in the others, but what do you mean by that language of money?
Yeah. So I read this book. What is it? I think it's called A View from the Top. And it was just so interesting because his whole point was like, we look at people groups that have been stuck in poverty for generation after generation. A lot of times we make it a race thing, or like we look at certain pockets and we make it race, where it's not really race, because you see like inner cities as well as like trailer parks, like it's not race, it's class, that is there. When you don't have people showing a better way, then you're trapped in this same perpetuating cycle of poverty, right? And so you see, people in trailer parks, as well as people in inner cities, as well as like, just all over the place where they haven't seen a better way, a kind of a way out of this way of life. And so that's what I love about the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is when you, and this is my story as well, right? I got involved with Young Life. My life was changed like crazy as a high school kid. I was a mess, but somebody came in, an older man came in and just started showing me and helping me see, this is how a real man acts. This is how a man acts, right? And so showed me the language of manhood, right? And am I perfect? No. I mean, just spend 5 minutes with me and you'll realize like I've got my issues, but am I where I would be without somebody stepping in and showing me like what it looks like to be a man, a good dad, all of that other stuff? I mean, man, I'd be dead or in jail probably right now. So because I'm an all-in kind of guy, and I was going all in the wrong ways. But I look at that with money as well. Money has a language. So I just posted on my TikTok, and so many people are hating on me and everything else, because I'm like, I posted, should we tell our kids how much money we make, where we invest our money, all of the other stuff? Because I remember like, it was this mystery, which like, how much money does my dad make? How much money, like whatever. And I'm like, why wouldn't we talk about that? Like, what do we gain? I mean, obviously we don't want our kids running out, like saying it to everybody, making some people feel bad, or some people like get all judgmental or whatever. But literally, why are we hiding this? Why aren't we talking real numbers to our kids? It's this financial illiteracy that's happening in America, where people are making, $50,000 a year and buying a $35,000 car on credit, like it's because their parents aren't talking real numbers with them through it. And so this is where we need to get into this language and talk through it. That's why wealthy people, you can say, oh, they just had everything handed to them. Well, yeah, probably have some handed to him and get a little bit of a head start because of it. But more than the money that was handed to him, they had the knowledge about money, the language about money, how money works, how investments work, what is good debt, which is like investments in properties and investment, and what is bad debt, like swiping a credit card for a TV or a car. Like these are questions that wealthy share with their kids. And the ones that are stuck without any money don't have that knowledge to share, which is why classes tend to stay in the same class structure that they've been in for generations, because people have not been helping them understand the path out.
Great feedback. I love that concept. Then our schools don't do it. And if our parents don't do it, it never happens. And it didn't happen in my family. But I did do the reading, and there's information out there. So no matter what age you're at today, you still have the capability. And Chris gave us a bunch of books that will get you on that path that's there. And that becomes the real key, is that we can learn from it. So the thing is, there's not an excuse you can't. But I agree with you, Chris. Your kids do need to know, and they need to know that, because otherwise they're going to go out and make those bad mistakes. And then guess what? They're going to probably want you to bail them out anyway. So you might as well teach them so you don't have to do the bailing out. It's let school be in session. Well, there's lots of information we could share. You've got a lot of knowledge. I appreciate you sharing with the Chargers and for our business owners, but we're at that time. We're going to have to jump to the recharge round. I want to ask you two questions there. The podcast is named Charge for a reason, because that's a mantra of mine of create habits around real goals every day. What habit has led to your success in life, Chris?
Oh man. I would say the biggest thing is morning routine. I'm by nature, I like to wake up late. In college, I would go to sleep about the time I wake up now. And, I just have, you talked about habits. I've just kind of habit stacked some of the stuff that I think is really, really important in my life. I read my Bible and pray every morning, feed myself spiritually. I write my journal and write my goals to kind of emotionally charge myself to get through the day. I work out every day, because I think, if our body's not working, where else are we going to go, And so I work out. And while I'm doing that, I'm also listening to some sort of audible book or podcast like this to really get me motivated, like a professional athlete that's listening to stuff before they go out and play.
Well, being interesting though, I've asked that question since I've had the podcast. We're over 200 episodes, and I would say 70 to 80% of the time I get some sort of morning routine. And my thing there is, Chargers, there's a reason that people do it. And I have my own morning routine too. It helps you really set your day, because the rest of the day, sometimes you may not be able to control every bit of it, but you can control that morning time. The last question, Chris, is really, we've all made mistakes. But the thing is some of us learn from us. Some of us just fear, making another mistake. Instead, what's that mistake that you've made, kind of that do-over? If you said, man, I would do that differently now, what would it be for you?
Yeah, I don't have time to get too far into it, but the hubris born of success is a very real thing. I made a lot of money in investing, and then I thought I could turn everything I touched to gold, and that caused me to lose a lot of money that then I had to dig out of that hole. And so now realizing that, that the hubris born of success, when I'm really winning big, I need to recheck myself to make sure that big decisions that I make aren't based out of a misappropriated view of myself and what we're doing, and thinking that anything we touch will turn to gold.
Great, Chris. I appreciate you sharing that. And folks, one thing I want to let you know, he's got a podcast, and you can tell he's a teacher by nature, because when he comes on someone else, that's what he did for us. His podcast is Uncommon Real Estate Podcast. So check it out. I'm sure you're on all the different areas that's there. Chris, also, if they wanted to catch base with you and stuff, how could they reach out to you?
Yeah. So many people were so generous with me with their time when I was coming up, and I was always reaching out. If I liked somebody's vibe on a podcast, I'd always reach out. So I try to reach back. I don't get back right away. I've got like 6 messages I got to return, but on Instagram at Craddock, Craddrock, not my last name, but an old cheesy high school nickname that I haven't changed. If you DM me, I'll respond to anything on there, or Obviously, TikTok, Chris Craddock Official. And then, just reach out, any of that, even the podcast or the Facebook group, Uncommon Real Estate. And that's for anybody that's a real estate agent / investor, is what my podcast is for. I think that they need to go hand in hand.
Yeah, great. I appreciate you sharing that. And he's got a website, chriscraddock.com. We'll have all that in show notes, because we know our chargers are not just sitting there listening to write down to be able to reach you, but we know you want to reach out to them. So go to chargepodcast.com. Chris, my son, does great show notes, and he'll have all that information down there so you can do it. And also those list of books. So instead of mentioning them again, we'll have that list, all those that Chris talked about. Figure out which one's right for you to start with one, and then you can add to the next one. Chris, I just can't say thanks enough for you joining us here on the Charge Podcast today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Chargers, I tell you, if you're not charged up now, Chris and I were, so you're going to have to hook yourself up to a battery charger or something, because I think we've charged you up. So my big action for you today is pick which one of those books and get it either on Audible or order it and get that thing in, and tell yourself within the next 30 days you're going to read it. That's my action item today. Chargers, we'll be back next week with another great podcast. Join us. Remember, like and share it. This would be a great one to send some of your friends. Make it a great day. Thanks for joining us.
This podcast is ended, but your life doesn't just stop. To continue your inspiring journey, head over to chargepodcast.com and access all the tools and resources mentioned on today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing with somebody who may also benefit from the advice provided. That's chargepodcast.com. Until next time, charge in business and life.